4 years ago I made a video on this film which was trapped forever by copyright issues. It still exists on Vimeo here, but instead of re-uploading an outdated version, I thought I'd give this film another serious investigation. So this is There Will Be Blood Film Analysis 2.0, the resurrection, the recut, rewritten version. This is The Search for Family. So rewatching the film for the first time in 4 years, the first thing that struck me was how quickly the themes of greed and capitalism fell to the wayside. They are of course present, but they felt more like context or setting in which a truly emotional character study unraveled with family as its most important theme.
That's enough.
The film revolves around a deeply ambitious man who encounters characters who will affect, reflect, and contrast Daniel Plainview. Now, the name Daniel means in Hebrew judgment of God. Daniel sees himself as a god amongst men. He even refers to himself as the third revelation.
I am the third revelation.
And even though he believes in plain speaking, suggested by his second name, nothing could be further from the truth. Daniel believes in his words as gospel and uses his ability to speak as a way of manipulating and securing land for drilling. Daniel is the first character to speak after close to 20 minutes. Similar to the biblical opening, God spoke and the earth listened. When introducing himself to the audience, he says,
Ladies and gentlemen, if I say I'm an oil man, you will agree.
The wording here is very deliberate and has Daniel making up the minds of others with his words. Daniel's voice is established early as his source of godlike power. This is why Daniel instantly sees through and dislikes Eli. He recognizes in him the same ability with words to manipulate and express. Eli is a reflection of Daniel. More on this shortly. Just look at the Stanford oil discussion. After Tilford makes one too many comments about raising Daniel's family, he threatens to cut his throat.
You just tell me how to run my family.
Very abrupt, but this hits on a number of themes. Daniel takes away Tilford's power of speech by cutting his throat and silencing him. He doesn't like to be told how to run his family, run his business, but as a man of his word, he solidifies the strength of his will as he brags about the deal with Union Oil.
I told you not to tell me how to raise my family. I told you what I was going to do.
It's crucial to understand Daniel's relationship and sense of power in his own words for this final line of dialogue.
I'm finished.
He recognizes a few things. The pursuit of oil is over, the battle for godhood with Eli is won, his family situation has completely lost hope, and perhaps God is judging him in the final moments. But more likely, with his words, Daniel is giving the film permission to finish.
I'm finished.
As if by saying so, the film is allowed to end. It draws parallels to some of Jesus' last words on the cross, "It is finished," and also suggests Daniel was unable to achieve godhood by failing to raise a son, and therefore, like Jesus, the bloodline stops with him. His true failing in the film is his relationship with HW and his attempt at fatherhood.
I thought as a boy that was the most beautiful house I'd ever seen. I wanted it. I wanted to live in it. And even as a boy, I wanted to have children to run around in it.
This vision represents his ambition for success and his much deeper and unspoken need for family. Now, Daniel achieves the house, but not being able to raise a son in his image, he isn't fully fulfilling this dream, and it's this realization which sends him into the spiral of darkness and hatred. Now, this suggests to me the moral lesson of the film could be success and grandeur are meaningless without the family which satisfies the inner desires of a troubled man. Now, we don't know how long he was living in this house before this scene. Judging by the decorations and well-filled rooms, it could have been a fair time, but it's clear that only when Daniel loses this promise and hope of family does he completely allow himself to be taken by his impulses and kill Eli. He's insulted and even physically harmed Eli many times before, but always with some restraint. The final act could be Daniel showing us that he has nothing left to lose. A question I asked in the last version of this video was, did Daniel actually love HW? Or was he just a front for this perception of his family business, the way that Daniel expresses at the end of the film? Well, after watching the film for more than 10 times, something occurred to me which I'd never noticed before, and I want you to pay close attention to this moment.
You stay here. You understand? You stay here.
Did you catch it? Okay, let's go back. As Daniel sends HW away, he sheds a single tear. Now, I'm not saying this tear is the key to the entire film, but what I am saying is that HW is the only character that can really affect Daniel's heart. And unlike Barry Egan from Punch Drunk Love, a man who craves connection but has no idea of how to do it, Daniel is a man who hates the company of others but is burdened with a deep human emotion and yearning for family, which is personified in HW. So not only does Daniel get put in a position of vulnerability because of his genuine caring for his son, but Daniel loses his godlike power and ability to raise him when HW is deafened.
Were you hit in the head? Tell me. Tell me if you were.
I can hear my voice.
And for the first time, Daniel's power and influence of his words is taken away. But let's back up a minute. When we first meet HW, he is washed in the oil of Daniel's first score, linking them through success, oil, and marking the beginning of their journey together. HW thematically represents hope for Daniel. During the scene when they are hunting quail and discover oil, we see the only time in the film when Daniel smiles and is happy with laughter. This moment combines the two things that he's been searching for. Number one, the promise for more success with the discovery of the earthquake oil, and number two, being able to share this discovery with his son and have that journey ahead of them together. Like the baby Jesus, HW is brought to Daniel through Immaculate Conception. But if we look at moments of juxtaposition in the film, it's almost as if HW brings Daniel to life. After a masterfully told and lonely character introduction, Daniel introduces himself to the audience. But this isn't the first time he speaks. His dialogue actually begins moments before, over the image of HW's first reaching out in connection with Daniel.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've traveled over half our state to be here tonight.
It's as if in this moment Daniel ceases to be a silent wanderer and begins his journey through the power of HW's affection. For me, this is the moment when Daniel feels his heart weaken and will forever be burdened by the step into fatherhood. So it's very fitting then that the same day his son is disowned, Daniel decides to kill and declare himself done. It's as if HW gave him life and without him there is nothing left to live for. Even though Daniel confesses to having a hatred of people and a competition in him, at all points during the film he has seen with a close partner by his side.
This is my closest associate. He hears everything.
The most crucial turning point for Daniel in the film is the loss of HW's hearing. This frustration for Daniel becomes evident and his son as a symbol of hope begins to fade, leading us to the more cynical and faithless version of Daniel, reflected in the character that arrives at this juncture, Henry. During the silent start of the film, Daniel is used to being alone. However, after growing with his son, Daniel trades fatherhood for companionship. But Henry reflects the worst sides of Daniel. He is mistrusting and Henry is untrustworthy. Daniel is driven by competition, Henry is driven by his failures, and similar to Daniel, does whatever is necessary to gain a level of success. Henry is exposed as a fraud at the beach. You can almost watch the realization wash over Daniel, followed by this gorgeous but meaningful shot of Henry in complete darkness. He is exposed, dishonest, and having none of Daniel's blood in him, is killed for trying to defy him. After the most heartbreaking scene in the film and Daniel trying to cope, HW is brought back, but the second section of the film is more out of guilt and Daniel's own selfishness than real caring for HW. We hear the line,
Oh, that does me good. That does me good.
hinting at the idea of how much this decision is to help Daniel feel better about himself. But after the crushing, disowning scene, HW uses the line,
I thank God I have none of you in me.
followed by a short flashback. Now we see two clips, the first of which we see a genuine relationship of affection, and the second we see HW wanting more, but Daniel foreshadowing the inevitable choice of work over family. And as much as his soul craves the connection which HW once represented, Daniel is burdened by his own nature and is destined to return to life alone. But let's go back a moment and talk about this line.
I thank God I have none of you in me.
Given the thematic nature of God throughout the film and Daniel's previous disrespect for religion, this line becomes much more of an insult. So let's talk about insults. Let's talk about Eli. Now at first glance it could be easy to assign Eli as the role of antagonist in the film, but really Daniel merely puts up with him to get what he wants for his oil business. When he wants the Sunday ranch, when he wants a pipeline, Daniel treats Eli as a boy physically and mentally as he outwits the young prophet. So Eli becomes not that of a threat, but more of a reflection of Daniel. Another wordsmith and self-assigned godlike figure, Eli manipulates and demonstrates his power to those around him. Daniel leaves one of his sermons with this wonderful insult.
We need more room. Oh, that was one goddamn hell of a show.
Goddamn and hell is enough in one sentence, but acknowledging the fact he views Eli's sermon as a show. He knows exactly what's going on. Eli's promises and abilities are empty and fake. This is shown in one of the biggest insults to Daniel when Eli cannot work his voodoo magic to fix HW's hearing. This is the ultimate sign of Eli's false nature, and Daniel loses his patience.
Aren't you a healer? And a vessel for the Holy Spirit? When are you coming over and make my son hear again? Can't you do that?
Before this in the film, Eli tries to put his words into Daniel's mouth by telling him how to introduce him. Daniel again completely disrespects and insults Eli about having any power whatsoever, along with threatening to bury him, which he eventually will, all of this adding up and making it for sweet revenge as the tables turn when Daniel is forced to confess his sins for the good of the pipeline.
I'll pay you $3,000. I'd like you to be part of our church. I'll pay you $5,000.
For a brief moment, Daniel allows himself to be part of Eli's spectacle, but only has a problem with the process when he is made to say,
I have abandoned my child.
This line is difficult for Daniel because it's a hard truth that he's hid from and dislikes having to explain himself. Now the fact that these words are coming from Eli makes it twice as bad. One moment I absolutely love is the silent words that Daniel whispers to Eli in the background, and the stunned expression which Eli is left with. Now if you remember in the beginning of the film, a very similar posture and held handshake where Daniel tells Paul that he will take back his money and more if he is lying. I can only imagine the threat of violence that Daniel is promising Eli for this kind of embarrassment. This scene and the final bowling alley scene parallel certain moments, and the two are really in conversation with each other. The obvious role reversal occurs with Eli embarrassing Daniel to Daniel taking his revenge on Eli. Both men are exposed for their false natures. The baptism ends with Eli being physically aggressive towards Daniel, but this is magnified in the final scene when Daniel physically kills Eli. Another interesting point that never gets mentioned is HW marries Mary at the end of the film, right? So making Eli Daniel's stepson. Therefore, Daniel obtains two sons through unnatural means and disowns both by the end of the film. Paul Thomas Anderson has an incredibly varied and accomplished body of work, but for me, There Will Be Blood is his masterpiece. I have a soft spot for Punch Drunk Love, and The Master grows on me every time I watch it, but There Will Be Blood, I'm sure, is a film that will stand the test of time in cinema history. And I wonder, for my own relationship with the film, how I'll view this film differently after another 4 years. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. It's been great to spend some time in the world of Paul Thomas Anderson again, and I'll be in the comments below if you want to talk about this amazing masterpiece. If you want more videos like this, then please subscribe and consider watching my Punch Drunk Love analysis and my analysis of The Master if you're a Paul Thomas Anderson fan. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Monday.